r/AskReddit. People who no longer speak to their best friends who they thought would be in their lives forever. Why did you stop talking / being best friends? Best friends since kindergarten. First friend I made in my new town. Freshman year of college I was home for break, and he was over my house with another friend. I went upstairs to talk with my parents, and left them downstairs in the den. When I came back I couldn't find my phone, so I checked upstairs again. Then when I gave up, and came back downstairs I noticed it poking out from under the couch. Sweet. They leave pretty soon after, and pretty soon after that I'd get a text from my college friend, who has the same name as the other friend that was over, saying, "Hey, your GF is pretty, but I'm not sure why you sent me a bunch of nude pics of her." I'm gonna go ahead and assume it was by accident and delete them. Turns out my friends took my phone, found my GFS nudes, sent them to themselves, tried they picked someone else with the same name, deleted the outgoing message, hid my phone, let me look for it, then planted it where it could be found. The only reason I ever found out is because my very gay friend from college was open enough to message me about it. I never talked to those other two again. I have a primal rage when I think about the pathology it takes to do something like that. Fear not my people. Best friend of 11 to 12 years slept with my girlfriend of 6 years. Now they live together with my old dog. Hurts man. Edit. It was dual ownership of the dog. We agreed after the breakup I'd get the dog every now and then. But after finding out about everything, I thought it best to just cut everything out. I thought it'd be easier. I live with people that have animals, so it's definitely helped, but they don't compare to my old genius girl. Edit 2. Some answers for questions. So I've always been socially anxious. I didn't have a large group of friends. My ex was the complete opposite. Loud, easy to talk to. It was like two sides of a coin. She brought me out of my shell. I kept her from getting too crazy. This worked on and off for the 6 years we were together, and by 6 years, I mean cumulatively, because she's dumped me before to go be with some other guy twice. I guess it's easy to say I was trapped in loving this girl that could toss me aside so easily. After the breakup, my friend called me up asking to get drinks and talk. I'd been noticing them hanging out more frequently on Instagram, so I knew something was up. When we finally met up, all he wanted to do was check on me and see how I was, to reassure that he was there for me after I told him how bad I'd been doing. I ended the night thinking, hey, at least I still have a friend that cares. He wants to meet up again about a few weeks later to tell me that they've been dating for some time now and that he meant to tell me previously but pussied out. He claims they didn't do anything until a month after the breakup, but they have pictures from a solo trip to Leavenworth weeks after the breakup. Suspect? It's been about a year now since everything, and I'm still not totally okay yet. But I live with people that care about me and 3 animals, so it helps with the loneliness. Thanks for taking the time to message me. Short story, she was emotionally abusive, controlling and manipulative. Long story, I thought she was my best friend. But when we first became friends she slowly started to isolate me from others under the guise of everyone else being a nuisance, bitchy, etc. When she got a girlfriend it only got worse. BC she would plan something with me only to cancel last minute, but expect me to be there immediately when something went wrong. Or get jealous of either of us started, talk to anyone else. It got to the point where I would skip class, assignments and even quizzes to tend to her needs. I should have stopped talking to her earlier, but it felt like if I didn't tend to her needs, I'd see her again at the hospital from a suicide attempt or from self-harm. One night after getting high off her ass, she told me how important I was to her, how I'm the most important person in her life, and that she couldn't live without me, just so that the next night she could essentially tell me to fuck off and fuck all the shit I did for her. I finally dropped her out of my life when I realized I was also super depressed, dropped 15 pounds in a month, and was struggling way too much with my classes. I had to drop out of school and go home so I could recollect myself. Not a bad story considering the fact that her ex-girlfriend is now my best friend. We bonded over the same piece of shit. This kinda fits. One of my 3 best friends from high school was a big jerk. He was mostly nice to me, but he was always 100% authentic with people, and that often meant he was pretty rude. He lived by me, and we liked the same sports, and we had fun doing stuff together, so I was pretty good friends with him, but I always knew he was a jerk. One other interesting part is that he was basically the fat kid his whole life. Then after his sophomore year of high school he lost like 80 pounds and was no longer fat. He was like 6'3" and went from probably 280 to right around 200. So he kinda acted like Cartman, but was no longer actually fat. One time in a baseball game my friend was being a jerk and the other team's coach called my friend a skinny ass. He thought it was too funny. Anyways, after high school I went to college and he started working oil fields making pretty good money. I barely ever saw him. Then one of my 3 best friends died in a car crash. The friend that died was a mutually good friend, and we hung out all the time. I went to the funeral, and I knew my jerk best friend would be there, and I didn't know what he would do. We hadn't talked in years. I saw him at the funeral, and he completely ignored me. Never pretended like he didn't see me or anything, but just did not care about my presence. I snickered to myself a little and thought, yup, seems just about right. I don't think he has bad feelings towards me. I don't towards him, but it is what it is. This will probably get buried, but I had a best friend who I really loved and thought of as a sister. Our friendship was great up until I started expressing interest in a man she and her boyfriend introduced me to. She started spreading rumors about me and started telling me to my face that I wasn't good enough for the guy I wanted to be with. She kept making comments about how it didn't make sense, that men liked me and not her, and that it wasn't fair. I'm not really sure what her issue was. I never believed that she actually had feelings for him. I always felt like she was just threatened that I was getting male attention and she wasn't. I knew she was deeply insecure about her appearance, and I thought this was part of her insecurity. I thought we'd be able to work through it, but it never ended. She wouldn't even acknowledge what she was doing. If I tried to talk to her about it, she'd just insist I was lying to make her look bad. Her behavior escalated to the point where she sent me a text message telling me she did not care about me or my happiness at all, and that my feelings and well-being would never come before her pride. I cut her off right then and there. For years, we did not speak. After 3 years, she sent me a message saying she was sorry and she had changed and was a better person now. I tried to give her another chance, but as soon as the conversation started, she brought up the guy from before and immediately started telling me that I wasn't good enough for him and was not allowed to be near him, etc etc. I cut her off again. Over the past year, she's been trying to contact me in various ways, but I keep blocking her because I just don't need this in my life. I can't understand why she's so hung up over this guy. I haven't spoken to him in years, and I don't need someone in my life who thinks she can control my relationships with others or take out her insecurities on me. It's really sad because I really did love her, but that girl who I thought was my close friend is completely gone. She's become someone who treats me with jealousy and hostility, and I don't want that in my life. 2 of them at the same time actually. Have known them both since early grad school. They came to my place and then I drove us downtown. We were bar hopping, but ended up at a show. None of us were messed up yet, so I asked, hey, can one of you guys drive? I wanna take this molly, but I'm not going to if y'all can't drive. My buddy grabs my keys and assured me he'll be good to drive. So I dove in. Well, I had a bad reaction and got sick. So we left. Once we hid my car, I laid down and blacked out. Next thing I know, one of my other friends who went to the show was knocking on my window. Turns out, they got too drunk, Ubered back to my place, and got their cars. Instead of taking me home, they left me blacked out in the back of my car in the middle of downtown. They literally took an Uber to my home. And they didn't take me. I have not spoken to either since, and will more than likely never do so again. These are supposed to be my ride or die bros. If they wanted to keep drinking, they shouldn't have taken my keys. And once that mistake was made, they cold fucking got me home safely. But instead they left me alone and unconscious in the back of my car. I cold been robbed, my car cold been stolen, I cold been arrested, etc. We were there through our lowest points in life. I watched her body and life fall apart when she developed an unknown chronic illness in high school. She watched me fall apart when my friends and long-term boyfriend abandoned me, when my mother was dying. She saw me before I was broken, and she saw me at my worst. I was there when her dog died. She was my family. Even now if she needed me, I would ignore all the problems and go be there for her. I know her chronic illness causes her to be very depressed. But after so many years of being the only one putting effort into the friendship, I had to call it quits. I had suffered an attack from a family member and had to leave my home. I was homeless for my birthday and her family let me stay on their couch, but she left me alone on my birthday during such a difficult time. She left to be with one of her friends from online, and they went and did all the stuff I always invited her to do, but got told no. Going to theme parks, the beach, you name it. And she never did mention my birthday after it passed. That was the final sign I needed, that she just didn't want to be my friend anymore. I've cried a lot over that girl. She was incredibly toxic. We had been best friends since grade school. I had moved states, but we maintained long distance contact for years. Though it became clear we were headed in different directions, I was eager to get started on my life and my studies. She was more interested in relationships. There were a few years I didn't have the funds to visit her in person. It wasn't until 2 years ago that I was able to, and by then she was a completely different person, which she had been hiding in our conversations. She had very low self-esteem, refused to acknowledge her mental illnesses, self-harmed, and placed all of her value within relationships, sex, and really just the attention she could receive from men in general. All of this from a very abusive relationship she had just gotten out of. I was completely the opposite. I visited her often. And while I still found fragments of the person I loved and cherished, it was sorta swallowed up in all this negativity. I ignored it for as long as I could, before I started listening to the people around me that kept telling me it was time to let her go. My mother, my sister, my boyfriend, and even some of my own friends. She was extremely irrational, had become reckless with her choices, and was deeply unhappy. I tried the best I could to help her, but it was affecting me as well. By the time I stopped visiting her, she had entered another toxic relationship despite my warnings. She had told me, to my face, nobody can convince me to not be with him, not even you. I cut her off earlier this year, and I still miss her like crazy, but I notice my anxiety has really toned down since then. We were best friends for 10 years, both 19 meters. One day we decided to smoke some weed. It wasn't anything out of the usual for us. After about 30 minutes he started getting very paranoid. I don't mean worried about getting caught. We live in an illegal state and we were smoking in a local park. I mean paranoid that people were out to get him. It got worse as time went by. Every single person who arrived or left the park was a suspect in his eyes. Eventually he then felt as if I was setting him up. I kept trying to comfort him but nothing was working. In fact, it escalated things and made it worse. I finally convinced him to change locations, so we got in my car and drove for about an hour until he felt comfortable enough to park somewhere. During that drive I was trying to tell him I'm not setting him up, and I've no idea where or how he got this idea. He kept denying it and saying I wasn't telling the truth, and he was completely on edge. We stopped at a fast food restaurant and I got him some food. He didn't eat it because he felt as if I had done something to it. Then he asked that I eat some of it first. I did. He still was not convinced, and by this time it had been roughly 2 to 3 hours since we smoked, so he should be sobering up, if not coming down. I dropped him off at his house and ever since then he has never been the same. I've only seen him 2 times after that occasion, and it's been many months since we've last been in contact. My parents ask about him all the time and I always make up excuses as to why we haven't been hanging out. We were inseparable. I honestly don't know what happened. Before this we would smoke together left and right. My best guess is some sort of psychosis that came about faster by him smoking weed. We were supposed to enlist together and now I'm leaving alone in December. We knew each other for a few years and became really close. When both our relationships started to go south, we never ended up together. We are both girls, and despite me being bi, she was straight and also not my type, but we did move in together once we were both single. We completely bonded over a pop group, and for Christmas, before we moved in, I bought tickets for 4 of us to see them. April 1st was the day of the concert and we moved in mid-March, promising we still had enough money for the trip. Day we leave for Cali and she has $4 to her name, gives us a sob story about how she'll just bring food to eat in the hotel room, but we weren't gonna let her do that. Everything is pretty great. We go to the concert and then not even 10 minutes after the concert lets out, we are not even in the parking lot yet, she groans and says, "I can't believe I have to miss my boyfriend's baseball game tomorrow." So I look at her incredulously and ask, "Is that really your priority right now?" Doesn't talk to me or my 2 friends the rest of the night. Next day, I find tickets released for the show that night that I wanna buy. She says she'll want to cry and go home, so I don't. We go around argue about the concert some more. She stops talking to me for the rest of the trip and we go home. That is, after I blow up in Central and walk out of the car when she says there's nothing left for us in Anaheim. When she's the reason I didn't go to the second concert in Anaheim. Just annoying. In the end, she has the audacity to say she did nothing wrong and I ruined the trip, which, whatever, we both tried to sublet, but she ended up crying that she was afraid of living with strangers. Tried to stay friendly with her until our lease was up. At that time, she was borrowing my car and I found her Instagram post calling me Satan got the key back and never talked to her again. Wow, I'm sorry for the long post. Guess I haven't vented about this bitch in a while. Thanks for letting me. It kind of faded out, but it shouldn't have. We always called ourselves soulmates. That's how close we were. I even lived with her for a few months in high school. She had a shitty childhood, and I knew everything. I was even there for some of the crazy fights her parents had. She never cared about herself. Ever. She never thought she deserved to be happy. She had depression, and in college, she was getting addicted to drugs and got caught twice with weed by the cops. It was hard being friends with someone who never wanted to help herself. She was going to school to be a psychologist and wanted to help everyone else. She would visit me at my college and would leave me to go smoke with my other friends. We talked on her birthday, and that was pretty much the last time. I reached out to months later after I received a letter I sent myself in high school that my teacher mailed out to us 5 years later. In the letter I told myself I better still be best friends with her. I cried when I read that, so I sent her a picture of it and she responded lol. I didn't even bother responding. To this day, I don't really know what I did wrong. I know we drifted, and maybe I wasn't the most supportive. I have been supporting her since middle school, and it got tiring after years of the same thing, but it wasn't my fault. Just wish I knew. It was a lot of things individually, but on the whole it came down to selfishness. Wall of text incoming. Moved in with one of my best friends at the time. We'd lived together in college and we were about a year or so out from graduation and had an opportunity for a real cheap apartment. Moved in with her and her boyfriend. Very quickly it became apparent that she was gonna be treating this place as her Barbie dream house, complaining about anything I brought into the space as going against her vision, and trying to get me to throw in on the expensive furniture she wanted to buy. You could never say anything negative around her, or she'd start going on about how much negative energy you put out, and was always very quick to remind everyone how many hours she worked, and how no one worked as hard as her. Constantly complaining about everything. going out of her way to start fights because it was her way or the highway. Just generally unpleasant. Don't know how the boyfriend put up with it. I tried to just ignore it as best I could and play good time Charlie. Then she joined the MLM scam. One of those health and wellness product lines. She was pushing that down everyone's throats. Hard sell, 24/7. You couldn't escape it. Forced her boyfriend to sign up. Started taking over the living room as her workspace, that is TV off, radio off, no talking because I have to listen to this conference call of people waxing poetic about the wonders of this scam company for the next 2 hours. We'd asked her to do it in her room if she needed space, but she said she didn't want to feel excluded, even though she was excluding herself. She had started to distance herself from me because I was skeptical about the whole thing. Kept trying to convince me. Started guilting me. Eventually made it clear that the only way to stay friends with her was to join the thing. Stupid me, I joined the thing. It was only to save what little friendship was left, which was stupid in hindsight. I lost a lot of money. So we are nearing the end of the lease, and she's talking like she wants to renew and all this stuff. Then like 3 weeks before the time comes, she decides she's like bored with her boyfriend or something, and she just fucks off. Like straight up dips, and has no contact with either of us. Turns out she's taking mental health days from work to do drugs and go cavorting around the city with one of her other friends who's been putting her up because she didn't want to be around us. She left her 2 cats with us to take care of. Her now ex was frequently away as well, with good reason though, so it fell to me. Shoveling cat shit was not something I wanted to add to my now frantic to-do list as I was trying to secure a new place to live all of a sudden. So during all this, girl's ex-boyfriend is a much better friend than she is. Seriously, total bro. I mean the guy's going through this nasty ass breakup and yet he's calling to check in on me because he knows I'm freaked out about suddenly having to find a house. Good kid. So the 2 of us work it out and decide we'll figure it out together. Meanwhile, suddenly Jolly girl shows back up because she's got to go back to work. She's acting like a total martyr. No one can complain because it's hard for everyone, okay? And this is all something that's happening to her, not something she caused herself or whatever the hell her rationale was. She just needed to do something new with her life and we needed to be understanding. Which is fine and all, but doesn't give her free reign to be a total B*******. Obviously, we weren't too ready to be all friendly with her, but like she was all ready to hang out with us and ask for puffs off our joints and shit like that. Afterwards she asked me why I was so standoffish, and I was just like, are you kidding me? Like you pull all this crap and complain about how this place is toxic for you, and then show up and demand we try to make you feel welcome? After that I think she got it and kind of withdrew. She went back to flopping around the city until the time came to divvy things up and go. She sent me a message asking to still be friends, and I sent her a bullet pointed list of all the reasons I couldn't do that. I ran into her only once since then, and it was awkward AF, but civil. I do have one old mutual friend who is bent on fixing our friendship, but I think I've made it pretty clear now that it won't be happening. Her ex-boyfriend and I are still buddies though. We're on like our 3rd apartment together. Good times are had by all. I got ill, regular doctor's appointments, and didn't have the energy to do lots of activities. They just stopped talking to me and blanked me when they saw me. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect so many people to have been in the same boat. I hope those of you who have been abandoned by friends through illness have managed to find better friends and make stronger relationships with others. Unfortunately my situation made me not very trusting, and I don't form any kind of relationship easy. For those who asked, I did try to reach out to my friends both at that time and also in the future. Unfortunately at the time I was just blanked and ignored. If I saw them in the street or around college they'd just look straight through me. Acquaintances and friends of friends also stopped taking to me, and I got horrible glares and looks, as if I'd been the one to do something. Naturally I was upset and hurt, but because I was ill I just didn't have the patience to care. It turned out my best friend took a year off to work and then came to my university, so I was starting my second year and she was in her first year. I only found out when she graduated and her parents put her picture in the local newspaper. A few years later my second best friend got a part-time job for the firm I work for, albeit in a different department and office. I reached out and asked if she wanted to meet for a catch-up, and she was very enthusiastic about it. I said I was free whenever and asked for her availability. No reply. I waited a few days and thought maybe she wants me to make the plans, so I suggested a time and place. No response. This was about 5 years ago. Also, to those who asked about what I would have wanted from them, the simple answer would be just to have things carry on as normal. Basic things: reply to texts, tag me in memes, usual sleepovers, study sessions. Only difference would be I couldn't come to anything when I had doctor/hospital appointments. She couldn't stop smack talking me to everyone. She had incredibly low self-esteem, and when I met her, so did I, but each step I took towards being more confident in herself, she saw as a threat. I started working out and losing weight. She told everyone that I was trying to look better than her. Eventually that turned into she stopped going to the gym and just did coke to stay thin. Nope, never done hard drugs in my life, and I was attending double sessions at the gym. I started seeing this guy who was really sweet and nice to me. She said I was just seeing him to show her what a jerk her boyfriend was. I was getting a dog after moving out of the apartment. She said I was doing it to taunt her, since her new place didn't allow dogs and minded. I specifically looked for dog-friendly places. I'd hang out with different groups of people because my antidepressants had kicked in and I wanted to be social again. She said I was going out to make her feel bad for not having friends, except that I'd invite her to come. But she told me she didn't like those people whom she'd only met once and was rude the entire time. I changed my major to business while she was in writing because I found business to be ridiculously easy. She said I did it because I wanted to make her feel poor after graduation. My parents rented a place at the beach and I invited her along and told her that they'd cover expenses because my parents remembered being poor college students and wanted us to have good meals and fun. She went but later said I invited her along because I wanted to show off my family's wealth. We went off season to a cheap place within driving distance. It got to the point where I couldn't say any longer that the people telling me these things were lying. It seemed like almost every day I was telling someone they must have misunderstood her, that she wouldn't say that. But nope. She reveled in being a frenemy, and I thought I had a friend. I distanced myself, and she went nuclear. I had friends send me screenshots of the insane messages she was sending them about me, completely unprovoked. We haven't been on speaking terms in almost a decade. Bought me a $3,000 computer setup, then the following week his parents called me to let me know he committed suicide. At the time it didn't make any sense and was seemingly out of the blue. I had known him since elementary all up till we graduated college, and he was quite literally the best person I knew, and TBH I looked up to him. He carried a charisma that drew people to him, but was never arrogant. One of the most, if not the most selfless guy I knew, and was always considerate/inclusive of others. Handsome dude that was committed to maintaining good fitness, so it always seemed like he had his shit together. Since he happened to be a total fantasy/sci-fi nerd, and funnily enough the best gamer out of us, was in great shape, and had such a humble personality, we had jokingly nicknamed him the unicorn for being a human being that shouldn't exist. Our first night ever drinking he drank enough to totally black out. As he started to sober up he started crying about how worthless he felt. First and last time he ever blacked out, and looking back afterwards he had always been methodical in how he drank. This was the only time I had seen him in such a vulnerable state, and we had all just laughed it off that night thinking he just happened to cry while drunk. The recalling of that still makes me cringe. Makes me wonder if I ever had the right to be his best friend, if he was suffering I had never known. I miss him. I had a friend I always hung out with in high school. We were absolute best friends, did everything together. After high school, I attended the local college. He went into the workforce. He started to spend more and more time at a local gaming place, Frags. Almost any time he wasn't working, or, on the rare occasion, hanging out with friends other than his fellow gamers, he was there playing an MMO. Can't remember which one, it was really popular at the time. There had been a few occasions that he blew off spending time with me, but no big deal. I understood he had his fun things he wanted to do, even if I wasn't really into it. However, there were a few other times where we made plans with friends, and he just forgot. He would sit for hours in front of the computer screen at Frags, and totally lose track of time. The next day he'd be all apologetic, and we would forgive him. One day, I got tickets to a comedian we both liked. He was going to be performing locally. I had just 2 tickets, so it was just me and him. We made plans to see the performance, and I went to pick him up at his place about an hour before the show. I get to his house, and his family hasn't seen him. His sister says, of course, he's probably at Frags. I head there, and sure enough, he was there, but has gone to grab food with other people, and has no plans whatsoever to meet up with me. I got so mad in that moment, that he would just blow me off like that. He probably forgot, like I said, not the first time, but it was just so hurtful, that we could go from best friends to this. I guess everything just kind of blew up at that point, and his behavior just made me switch off. I went to see the comedian by myself, sitting alone, which wasn't much fun. Those kinds of experiences are things you want to share with someone, you know? He never even tried to get in touch with me until about 3 days later, when he called my house. I told my parents to tell him I'm not home, and I never spoke to him again. That was about 18 years ago now. Edit. I remember the game. It was EverQuest. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.